All right, yeah, Houston is another super exciting team this season that obviously had a super busy offseason. So yeah, I think where we can start, just because again he's the biggest name, is Kevin Durant. And yeah, how do you envision Kevin Durant fitting in with this team, and what do you think about the value they gave up to get him?
Yeah, I thought, well, the value they gave up, I think they it was very good. Like to be able to get a guy like Kevin Durant with only giving up Jalen Green, who, while he had some excellent stretches during the regular season, for the most part, you could almost say they feel like a hindrance at times to this team's ceiling. Talented offensive player, and I think he improved throughout his career, but there was always, I don't know, just like that. Hey, he's going to be too inefficient offensively for this to work. Now you're having Kevin Durant come in and be this primary scorer that Jalen Green was supposed to be. And Kevin Durant is one of the best in NBA history at being the primary scorer. So I think that's going to work out flawlessly. You gave up Dylan Brooks, but it always felt like you were going to have to move off him eventually with Tari Eason and Jabari Smith there. So yeah, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I mean, he's a high level defender, but you're assuming that, I mean, you added Josh Okogie as well. You have Tari Eason, you have Jabari Smith, you have Dorian Finney-Smith. So you're assuming that that'll be enough that you are fine giving up Dylan Brooks and you can make up for it defensively and still be a high level defense. Oh yeah, Ahmed Thompson is there as well because he's obviously a defensive player of the year candidate. So Kevin Durant can be the primary scorer. He can play off the ball. This can be, I would say, and I don't think this is an unfair or unrealistic statement, the best team and certainly the best defense that Kevin Durant has been on since the Golden State Warriors. It's better than the Nets team. It's not doesn't have the star names, the star power of Kyrie Irving and James Harden. It doesn't have a Devin Booker, but more depth, a high level center in Alfred Şengün, Ahmed Thompson, who's a high level player. I'm really excited. I think that the fit here is really good, and it's just going to allow Kevin Durant to just be who he is, who he wants to be, what he's best at, and that's scoring the ball, but also just playing within the team. It's not going to have to be taking turns going ISOs. He can do that when he needs, but there's so much talent here, and I think he's going to be able to get some really good looks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this fit is really seamless to me. I think you look at the Rockets, they were the number two seed in the West last year, but at the same time, all season it did seem like they sort of lacked that go-to scorer. Obviously, Şengün was really good, Thompson was really good, Jalen Green was really good, but none of those guys, at least yet, isn't a consistent number one scoring option, and that's what Kevin Durant is. And then along with that, I do think they sort of lack that just knockdown shooter. And again, that's what Kevin Durant is. He's one of the most efficient scorers of all time, and he's also just one of the flat out most gifted and talented players of all time. So I think just adding him to this already loaded team and not having to give up a ton is just super logical. And I mean, throughout really the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, I think the Rockets were the team that made the most sense just based off where they are in their timeline and how many assets they have and then just how much they need that go-to scorer. So yeah, I thought it was an awesome move and super excited to see what he can do with this team. I think we're gonna see a really strong Kevin Durant season. Last few years he's still provided incredible production. He's just been on teams that really don't maximize his strengths. And I think, I mean, you mentioned it. I definitely agree that this is the most talented team he's played with since Golden State. Maybe not from like a raw talent standpoint, because he's obviously played
Mm-hmm.
with like that Nets like big three and then the Suns big three, all that. But I do think we're sort of seeing a shift in the league where it's not as much about who's your big three and what's the talent look like on paper, but rather how deep is this team and really like how well these guys fit together. And I think this is a team that really fits nicely together. I mean, the size, the versatility, and then having that go-to scorer in Durant is just massive. And yeah, I'm super excited. I think it's also cool just to see him on a younger team and sort of being that veteran mentor as well as just really leading this younger team on the court. So yeah, super excited. And yeah, I mean, how can you not be really just fired up to watch this Rockets team, especially just how fun and good they were last year, and then adding Durant to that's incredible. Another move I want to talk about is Dorian Finney-Smith, which was a sign-in. I don't know about you, but that certainly caught me off guard. But I think that's another perfect fit in this culture. But yeah, what do you think about Dorian Finney-Smith's fit with this team and then his overall impact?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if we look at who Dorian Finney-Smith or what he's been able to be, he's like a really nice 3 and D connective piece, and he'll be able to provide that in Houston. I assume that he's not going to start because it'll probably be Kevin Durant and Jabari Smith at the forward spots, but he'll be a nice reserve option alongside Tari Eason, and then maybe if they want to run some bigger lineups, they can maybe have Amen Thompson at point guard and then have three of Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith out there together, or maybe that can be a lineup, like a death lineup with Amen Thompson and those four. And that would be really good defensively and still have enough offensive firepower. So it'll be interesting. I think there's going to be a number of ways that Ami Udoka is able to utilize Dorian Finney-Smith within these lineups because he can do a number of things without demanding the ball. Just like a nice floor spacer, nice defender. So yeah, it was kind of an underrated move because it wasn't something that I would necessarily expect them to be targeting because they do have both Jabari Smith and Tari Eason as defending wings, but having another one isn't bad, and especially one that can space the floor like he can. So he'll probably be more important to this team than I'm really expecting him to be, just because I'm like, there are other players here, but you can't go wrong with having a talent like him, especially if you are trying to compete for a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he really fits in with any team. And for this Rockets team, I thought it was really smart to really double down on this strength of length and defense and versatility as well. And yeah, I mean, like I said before, it wasn't a move that I expected at all. But yeah, just an awesome move. Especially you lose Dylan Brooks. Obviously you're Brendan and Kevin Durant, so that's worth it, even if you're not able to sign a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith. But really being able to get that versatile defender, a guy who is very capable both on and off the ball, I think is huge for them. And then just having the lineup versatility, like you talked about, is massive with Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith. I mean, there's just so much versatility and optionality there for Ime. I think it's going to be massive for this team. And I just love how they doubled down on their strength of defense and especially win defense. And I think that's something that was really crucial to their success last year. I mean, you look at how disruptive Thompson, Eason, and Brooks were last year. I see no reason not to sort of replicate that, and you add in the offensive addition of Kevin Durant and really how good of a defender he can be as well. And it just takes this team to a whole nother level. So yeah, super interesting. Another thing that I think went a little bit underrated with their offseason was the signing of Clint Capella. That was another move that definitely surprised me. And then also re-signing Steven Adams. So having that optionality at like we talked about, but in a different way, specifically at the big man position. We saw them use this a lot against Golden State, those double big lineups with Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün, and it worked really well. How much do you envision this team utilizing that double big lineups now with Clint Capella in the mix?
Yeah, hopefully less than maybe it seems like because I don't know. I think it works well on a matchup basis. And with certain teams, I guess in the West, it probably is going to be helpful. It worked well against Golden State. Obviously, OKC can utilize it. But to me, a double big lineup, and I think everyone's been getting really caught up in a double big lineup this offseason because we've seen a couple teams that have had success use them recently, specifically with this Houston lineup, with Cleveland, with OKC. But I think that you can't just take any two centers. OKC, like Chet Holmgren can play on the perimeter, and Isaiah Hartenstein moves pretty well, can pass well. With Cleveland, obviously, Evan Mobley is a super dynamic big. Steven Adams can pass, but I don't think a double big lineup with Steven Adams and Clint Capella necessarily works super well because neither is going to do any sort of spacing, and you're probably not going to give them too many like, hey, we're going to feed them in the post the way you would just run the offense through Alperen Şengün. So it'll be Şengün with either one of these guys. Probably more so Adams than Capella because Adams can pass. Capella's just a product of playing alongside, like offensively. He's good on the offensive glass, but a lot of his looks over the past, I mean, really his whole career, he's played with James Harden and he's played with Trae Young. So it's been a lot of lobs. And how does Houston utilize him? I think Clint Capella was even more of a depth signing that we even realized. So I don't know how much he's actually even going to be utilized. I think that the double big lineup with Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün was really interesting and it worked well. I just don't see Clint Capella being able to have the same success or the team having the same success with Clint Capella in that lineup. Now, the fact they did sign him, maybe they are going to give it a go. I just don't foresee that being a successful lineup.
Yeah, I think that's definitely valid. I think we're gonna see. I think the way I look at it, at least, is sort of having Clint Capella as that sort of insurance there for Steven Adams, just in case he gets injured. And I do think that this team will tend to utilize and take advantage of their size, especially in certain matchups, like you said. And yeah, obviously it's going to be Şengün and then one of the two. But maybe if Steven Adams gets injured, I could see Capella getting a bigger role and just having that insurance there, or just having a little bit of a slightly different look. I mean. Capella's a little bit more of that traditional lob threat, where Steven Adams is a little bit more of that like bruiser type and just a big body that can grab a ton of rebounds. But Capella can also rebound at a high level as well. But having a little bit of a different element to use within that double big lineup next to Şengün, I think is interesting. Yeah, I don't necessarily think Clint Capella is going to be like a mainstay in this rotation, getting like 20 plus minutes, but I think they'll experiment with him next to Şengün to get him out. I'm intrigued to see how it plays out. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I definitely do think it's more of a matchup than against smaller teams like a Golden State, like in LA. I think it makes a lot more sense. And then maybe if like a Oklahoma City is running their double bigs, maybe they'll want to go to that just to sort of match up with them in that regard. So I like having that extra optionality, but yeah, who knows how often it will be utilized, and it definitely makes more sense in some scenarios than others. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But overall, I mean, this Rockets team just has incredible positional size across the board, other than Fred VanVleet, who's obviously a little bit undersized. But other than him, everyone's really like 6'6" and up, and then has super good length, and I think that's just another thing they're trying to buy into by signing Capella. So I think another player we have to talk about is Amen Thompson. I mean, he made a massive jump last year in his second season, especially in that second half of the year. Do you sort of foresee him reaching another level, or just more so continuing what he did in that second half of the season?
I think continuing what he did in the second half of the season is the baseline. I mean, he could definitely take a step forward in year three. A lot of players do in year three because just been in the league a little bit longer. He barely played as a rookie, and then we saw him break out when he was finally in the starting lineup. He's not giving that spot back. Now he's going to have Kevin Durant to play next to, so there's going to be even more driving lanes. I mean, if we look at this, Fred VanVleet is a knockdown shooter. Kevin Durant, say it's Jabari Smith as the starter, and Alperen Şengün, who's a decent enough shooter. The driving lane should be really open for Amen Thompson. And whether it's he's driving in, getting layups, dunks, whether he's kicking it out for three, he's dumping it off to Şengün, a lot of the offense, I think he's gonna be the one that creates a lot of it, or he's gonna have the opportunity to, just based on the way this team is laid out. And then obviously with Dillon Brooks gone, I would say he is now the one that's gonna be taking on the toughest matchups on the perimeter. And like every single time, it's not gonna be like a better matchup, better fit. Amen Thompson is your lockdown defender. So yeah, I would say, I mean, it's always tough in the West to kind of predict first time All Stars, but just because of how much talent is there, it's often comes down to who's healthy and who plays enough games. Amin Thompson could definitely push for an All Star spot and should be all defensive first team, I would say. I think that's definitely something that I'm expecting from him next year.
Yeah, for sure. I think you really nailed it there, and that was a great point about sort of the increased spacing and how that opens up more driving lanes for Thompson. I think that's going to be massive. I mean, I don't see him like you said. I think the baseline would be what he did towards the second half of last season, and I do see him taking a massive step up just because he's entering his third year, and we've seen just so many flashes of that upside, and it really wouldn't shock me at all if he ends up being that all-star for this team. I know Şengün was an all-star last year. Kevin Durant, I think he's going to be sort of an all-star every year. So it wouldn't shock me if this team's good enough to the point where they get three all-stars, or if Thompson sort of takes Şengün's spot as that all-star, just because of his value on defense especially is just immense. I mean, he's one of the 3 to 5 best defenders. You mentioned all defensive first team. I think that's a pretty clear bar for him. I believe he got there last year, and he even got some Defensive Player of the Year votes. So I sort of see more of the same. I don't know if he's going to get Depoy votes with Wemby being fully healthy, but at the same time, sort of being one of those top three in Depoy guys, and then really, like you said, taking on the toughest matchups every night will be massive for this team. And it's such a luxury to have a guy who can really defend multiple positions, and is such an elite on ball stopper, but also just completely wreaks havoc off the ball with just how good of an athlete he is and how well he understands the game. And yeah, he's just one of the most exciting players in the league to watch, especially just how young he is and the incredible upside that he has. Another thing I want to talk about with this team is if they can become top 5 on both ends of the floor. That might sort of seem like a lofty goal. They were there defensively last season. Offensively, they were 12th, but with Kevin Durant, I think that could be a possible leap. And then you really look at these last few teams that have won championships, and a pretty common thread has been that two-way balance and being top 5 on both ends of the floor. So do you sort of foresee the Rockets reaching that level? I mean, defensively, I don't think it's as much of a question, but on offense, and then how do you think that is connected to sort of their championship goal?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Like you said, they were 12th in offensive rating, 5th in defensive rating. Lose Dillon Brooks hurts the defense a little bit, but you have enough there, and Kevin Durant's not a defensive slouch to the point where it's going to dramatically ruin the defense, but he is that much of a difference offensively from what you had with Jalen Green and what you were getting from Dylan Brooks. So yeah, I could definitely see a scenario where this team finishes top five in offensive rating and defensive rating. Uh, just looking at the teams that finished ahead of them last season, I expect Cleveland to be back there, OKC to be back there, Denver, New York. I think Memphis is fair to expect to be back up there, but like Boston with no Jason Tatum, how much do they lose offensively from that? Sacramento, I just like they're just such a mess. Like I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, and maybe they can make it work really well, and the offense can be up there again with Sabonis. Minnesota will still be up there, but then you have like Indiana with no Tyrese Halliburton. Are they going to be a top 10 offense? I don't know. Probably not. The Bucks, they lost a good bit. Obviously, you still have Giannis, but this team didn't really get better. So yeah, I could definitely see Houston just off the sense that I do think that they genuinely got better, but also some of the teams that were better offensively than them last year aren't going to be as good. So top five in both offensive rating and defensive rating is definitely realistic for them.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point and great way to look at it, just going over the teams that were above them. And with the improvements the Rockets made, I definitely do see them taking that leap. And at least me personally, I think that's really key to them being true title contenders. I think they're obviously in that conversation, but if they end up winning a championship, I think we'll see them. Doesn't have to be exactly top five in offense and defense, but around that range, just because of the recent historical trends that have really proven. I mean, you got to be elite on both ends of the floor to succeed at the highest level. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is something that the Rockets are capable of this year. I think we can move ahead to the breakout player. I don't know about you, but this was kind of a tougher team to come up with a breakout player for because there's just so much established talent. But who do you got as your breakout player here for the Rockets?
Honestly, there's a couple guys here as kind of hard to decide because depends on what your definition of breakout is. Because I think we could see another leap from Şengün. We could see where he's been dominant during Eurobasket. Could we see him take another step forward this upcoming season? Definitely. Reed Shepherd, I think, could break out. I think what's limiting for him is that I don't like he's not going to start, and I don't know how many minutes he's going to get because Fred VanVleet is a guy that plays a lot of minutes. Thompson still obviously going to play a lot of minutes. There may not be a ton of minutes for him, but he'll be much better than he was as a rookie, in my opinion. He was good as a rookie in certain regards. It was just such a limited role, but just automatically going to be better with playing a larger role. But I think probably the guy that fits best this description of breakout players, Tari Eason. He's a guy that I've liked since he came into the league. Had some, I guess, health issues, or being able to stay healthy. His second year in the league was really good last year. I think the addition of Kevin Durant doesn't necessarily change too much for him. Maybe some people are expecting that, but I think they just play different roles and do different things. So it's more about him and Jabari Smith trying to make that work together. And maybe Dorian Finney-Smith impacts that a little bit as well. But I could see Tari Eason having a really healthy season and just being a very, very impactful player defensively. Because we look at last season, he was like kind of limited early on, and then he did miss a nice stretch of time. Then he wasn't playing back to backs, and I think if assuming he's healthy, able to stay healthy through the offseason, is healthy heading into next season, I think we could see the best season of Tari Eason's career, and it just makes this Houston team even more dangerous.
Yeah, I think that Eason's pick is a really good one. I mean, he's always going to get big minutes because of what he brings to the table defensively, and he really embodies that Houston culture that Udoka's built up. So I think that will be massive. And then, yeah, without Dylan Brooks, he could even take on a bigger role. And then just being healthy is massive for him, like you mentioned. And offensively, I do think he has another level to reach, and he's young enough to the point where I could see that happen in this season. The Şengün point is a really good one too because just how good he's been in Eurobasket. Playing next to a guy like Kevin Durant could benefit him as well, and he's another guy who's pretty young, so he could take another step up. I don't think we're looking at this Rockets team as a team that has a most improved player candidate or anything like that, but I think there's a lot of guys that can just take a step up. I mean, we mentioned Thompson earlier. I do think if he's able to establish himself as an all-star, that would be a breakout season, so to speak. But I do think more so his breakout season was last year. I mean, he just took such a massive leap. It's hard for me to call him a breakout player because I feel like everybody already sort of knows how good he is. I'm gonna end up going with Reed Shepard on this one, who you mentioned. I do think there's opportunity for him to get some minutes. Sort of with the loss of Jalen Green, I do think the Rockets could use a little bit more perimeter shot creation. Obviously, I mean, they still have Fred VanVleet above him, and he's not going to start, like you said. Kevin Durant and Thompson can also create for themselves at the perimeter a lot as well. But I do think That's something the Rockets are going to be looking for. And I mean, they spent a number three overall pick on this guy. I just don't see him getting no minutes next year again. I think he can take some of those Aaron Holiday minutes who was playing above him. And then even looking at Fred VanVleet, I mean, he's an awesome player, don't get me wrong, but 35 minutes, I do think there's opportunity for his minutes to be slightly reduced to, I mean, a respectable like 30 minutes a game range, and then open up a little bit more opportunity for Reed Shepard there. And I do think that's something this Houston team has done a really nice job of developing these young guys while remaining super competitive and just really how good they're going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of chances for Reed Shepard to play a pretty significant role. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to play 20 plus minutes a game, but if he can sort of be that like maybe ninth, 10th guy on this Rockets bench and get a bigger role, I could see that being a breakout season for him. When you look at how poorly he shot the ball last year, I just don't think that's going to be something that continues. Just looking at how elite of a shooter he was in college, I think that's just sort of a small sample size trend with him not playing in a ton of games and really not getting enough minutes while he played. But at the same time, he did show some flashes of what made him a number three overall pick, and I think he's going to show a lot more of that, especially as a shooter, but then also just as that connective playmaker type of guy, a guy who can create shots for himself at a fairly high level as well. He's not like some pure three-level scorer, bucket getter type guy, but he can create shots for himself at a pretty high level. So I think we're gonna see him have a bigger role with this Rockets team, and definitely one of the more intriguing parts of this team is just seeing what Shepard can do in his second season. All right, I think we can move on to the over/under projections, and then sort of thinking about how this Rockets team stacks up in the West. They're currently sitting at 55.5 wins is their projection. Do you feel the over or the under there?
I think it's a good line, but I think it's a pretty interesting line. Because if we look at last season, they won 52 games, but they lost their last three. They rested the starters for two of those, and then played the starters in the regular season finale, but only played them for a little bit. And they were trying to win that game, but I think it mattered a little bit more for Denver, and so they had no problem pulling the starters. So realistically, if they were trying to win 55 games, they could have done it last season. I think this team is better, so I would take the over here. I think they're the clear number two team in the West. Obviously, health is a big factor, and they did have a really nice winning streak led by Jalen Green late last season. They won't get that random 2 or 3 week stretch from him where he plays like the best player in the world because he's not on the team anymore, but they're going to have Kevin Durant all season. So I would say over 55.5, assuming they're healthy. I think they're definitely the number two team in the West, and they'll be giving OKC a run for their money in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to go with the under here, but I don't think that's anything against the Rockets. I think it's just a testament to how good the West is, and recent history has shown that not a ton of teams really crack that above 55.5 game mark. I still do see them as that second seed, but I see them maybe literally if they win 55 games, they literally slightly hit the under. I see them as that like 54-ish win team, so slight under, but obviously still super high on this Rockets team. Definitely going to be a top three seed at minimum. I feel like their floor is like that 3 or 4, but I do have them like you second behind the Rockets. Um, Thinking about sort of how they compare to other teams in the West, obviously the Nuggets were another team that made some massive moves this offseason. You sort of mentioned they're going to be giving the Thunder run for their money in the Western Conference, but do you sort of envision them matching up with the Thunder a little better than the Nuggets will?
I think we've already seen some nice battles between Houston and OKC. I think that maybe not necessarily a better matchup, just in the sense that I think Jokic just poses problems for every single team that nobody on Houston is going to pose a problem for in that same regard. But I do think that this is a much deeper team than Denver. A young team does a lot of the same things that OKC does well. So, not in the sense that this is necessarily the best matchup. I just think that this is the second best team in the West. They do match up fairly well with OKC. And a guy like Şengün can potentially give like a lighter version of what Jokic has been able to do. And Thompson's obviously incredibly dynamic, and they have a number of guys that can switch on the perimeter and defend multiple positions the same way OKC does. And then Kevin Durant is an all-world scorer. OKC obviously has the defenders to make his life difficult, but he's still Kevin Durant. He's still going to win some of those matchups. So, yeah, maybe this is the best matchup for OKC in the West, but I think it's just clearly the second best team, top to bottom, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, talent-wise, this team's just completely loaded and they're super deep. And then, I mean, as we discussed earlier, just add in a consensus top 10 guy in Kevin Durant and an elite go-to scorer is going to really do wonders for this team. And they are really similar to OKC, like you said, in the sense that they're super versatile, super good on defense. So, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I still can't get off of this Denver team. I do think just seeing them go toe to toe with the Thunder in the playoffs, they were one game away from winning, and then seeing that Nikola Jokic, now the best player in the world, has the best supporting cast of his career, I'm super bullish on them. But at the same time, I think the Rockets make a lot of sense, and I definitely think, I don't know about you, but I think one of these three teams in the West will most likely win the title. I mean, maybe you could make an argument for like a Cleveland, New York, something like that, but I think the champion this year will be between this Rockets team, obviously the Thunder, the defending champs, so they have to be put in that conversation and they were just so dominant, or the Nuggets. Do you sort of agree those are the three main contenders, or are you maybe like a little bit higher in one of the East teams?
No, I think that the Eastern Conference is just a battle for second place. That's just what it is. Denver's definitely, I would say, got a really good chance because one, they have the experience. They rely on a lot of continuity. Cam Johnson is an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr. in my opinion. I think we probably do need to see some improvement from some of these younger guys. Like, do we see Peyton Watson take a step forward or Julian Strawther? Getting back Bruce Brown helps, I think, because I'm just looking through who they have now. The Valanciunas edition, the best backup center of Jokic's career. So you're right, this is the deepest team that Jokic has had. So it will be interesting to see because I would still say that Houston is a deeper team, but obviously nobody on their team is what Jokic is. And just in the sense that this is the deepest team of his career, is that enough of a supporting cast around him to almost beat anyone? Because, like you said, they pushed the Thunder to 7 games. Yeah, I would say it's probably one of those three teams, but basically whoever makes out of the gauntlet of the Western Conference, assuming it's not like someone makes it out of there and it's just like a battle of who's the healthiest, and but whoever it is just so drained from playing a bunch of 7 game series and they're not healthy or whatever, and then somebody just kind of rolls through the Eastern Conference, that maybe that's enough of an advantage. But in my opinion, it's like, if I don't know if there is betting lines for betting on who's going to win the NBA Finals, the West or the East, but I would say that it should be the West.
Yeah, for sure. The West is just a heavy favorite, and yeah, I agree. Whoever really makes it out that gauntlet should be NBA champions. I mean, it's easy to say that now in September, and maybe come April we'll have a different opinion, but I think that's sort of where we're both at. And then one of these three teams in the West definitely seems like the clear favorite to win it at this point. But yeah, I think we can wrap it up here. Before we head out, I just want to give you a chance to plug your work to our listeners and tell them where they can find you at.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Noah Rubin 22. I write for Roto World. We're going to start our preseason fantasy basketball content coming up pretty soon. So that should start being live on the Roto World site. And I'll be tweeting out links to all my work there. And then I'm also the host of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast, which is just a focus on dynasty leagues and some of the younger prospects is most of what we talk about. We still talk about other players as well, but it's mostly younger players with upside. And it's a fantasy focused podcast, but I think that even if you're not a fantasy fan, I don't think that too many other just general NBA podcasts are going as in depth with some of these players that are at the end of the bench or just in the G League. There probably isn't too much content out there like that. So tuning in for that, I think it is interesting or applicable for anyone, even if you don't play fantasy basketball, because I try to not just make it just about fantasy basketball, trying to talk about players and roles and expectations that are relevant for everyone. So if you're a basketball fan in general, I definitely think that it's worth checking out.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you coming on the podcast again, Noah. It was an awesome time chopping it up with you. But yeah, make sure you guys go check out Noah's work, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Cassels Cast. Once again, huge shout out to Noah for coming on the show. It was a ton of fun, and make sure to go check out his work. Catch you guys on the next episode.